You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Welcome back to Engage, and we have a very special episode for you today. Probably the first time that we've done this on Engage. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. And yeah, we teased it yesterday by saying that thematically these two emails would be connected. Yesterday was an iTunes review. Today is a little bit longer email from a listener. And we're connecting some of those dots where we've heard definitely some harsh criticism about how we handle certain topics. And today, something a little bit different, but related.
But this time, though, this is coming in from an email from missionlog@roddenberry.com.
Yeah, this is an email from Elliot. And this one was a little bit further back, but here, I'll just read it and you will hear how it connects.
Okay.
Hello, gentlemen. Well, first of all, that's pretty presumptuous.
Indeed.
I hope you don't mind me writing you again. First, I want to say I feel like Norman has really come into his own in his role as co-host. I was a tad skeptical of the new dynamic, but I am enjoying the current season immensely.
$20 is in the mail for you, Elliot.
We just stop there if you want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. DS9 Season 6 has my favorite episode of the entire franchise, Far Beyond the Stars, as well as some of the most egregious anti-Trek stories ever told within the franchise, including Sacrifice of Angels and the Pale Moonlight, Inquisition, and The Reckoning. I appreciate that you take all of these stories to task in a way that feels taboo in the current Trek discourse. DS9 is lauded as the best of the incarnations by many, and there's a lot to love about the series, but don't get me wrong. It seems like that love is wedded to DS9's subversiveness itself, which seems strange to me. In any regard, nuance is a more and more elusive quality in media criticism, so thank you for that. Perhaps, as two people with distinct spiritual values, insofar as you share them with us, you can confirm my general feeling about how DS9 seems to handle religion. It seems like a series of religion-based stories written by people who do not have religious faith, but want to demonstrate to others how tolerant they are of religious people, something Roddenberry's Trek never bothered with. The point seems always to come back to the subversion, often to the point that the substance suffers. Those characters who express any doubt about the prophets are relegated to strawman roles, and our religious characters, especially Sisko and Kira, are never directly challenged about their faith. It's worth mentioning that the series regularly conflates faith in the prophet's intent and concurrent divinity with their existence. In our world, these concepts are conflated because God cannot be proven to exist, but even the atheists like Keiko acknowledge that the prophets exist and have the abilities that they clearly manifest. Anyway, the only characters whose faith is sincerely questioned on the show are frauds like Wynn, and later, spoilers, Dukat, while the skeptical main characters are carefully roped off from the meaty discussions. Odo abandons his skepticism because he loves Kira. Bashir, even in his genius state, is regarded as naive. Dax's skepticism is dismissed as snark, etc. Now, Far Beyond the Stars is, in my opinion, the one time they got faith absolutely right, connecting the prophets to Benny's dream, which is also, in a way, Roddenberry's dream, demonstrates such a remarkable insight into the religious condition that I am flummoxed how the same crew can create such silly stories as Destiny and Covenant. Thanks for another great installment. I'm looking forward to Voyager before too long. Live long and prosper. Elliot. Wow.
Wonderful email.
Yeah.
And very articulated.
So you can see how those are related, Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of see where he's at with this. I guess you're seeing what's wonderful about these two emails back to back. You're seeing the two different sides of probably people who are questioning the aspect of religion in Deep Space Nine from a why can someone criticize it standpoint to why isn't it being criticized standpoint. And I love the conversation that is being inspired in the in-between. That's you and I in engaging with this email. What I like about what Elliot's saying here, what he's saying, I think, about Deep Space Nine and religion is that religion is being written, again, by people who probably are not as consistent with their religious belief systems. I'm making a huge assumption with that, but maybe it's not even just that. Maybe it's because there are so many writers in the writing room that are, they are responsible for their particular part of the story. Not every single writer in that writer's room may understand what the through line of the Bajoran religion and the prophets and the paw rates are, because there really isn't a through line.
Mhm.
When you go into a writer's room and you're responsible for the course of the day, you're responsible for certain characterizations. Are the characters hitting these beats right? Are you on production time, et cetera, et cetera? But I don't think that there was probably a, say, pardon the pun, a prophet's Bible in the room
Right.
where writers would go and say, oh, is this consistent? Oh, is this consistent? Am I saying this correctly? Which characters are the pinnacles of spirituality? Which ones are the protagonists and antagonists? Because it's really across the board in Deep Space Nine. And that's probably what the most frustrating thing is about it, is that you don't really understand the whole reason for the prophets to begin with. And when you try and make sense of it, the obfuscation is there because you really can't make sense of any of it, except for maybe some high dramatic points. The bombing of the school, for example, where Keiko was teaching science instead of spirituality, framing it in a way that you believe that Kai Wynn did it. But if she's such a spiritual leader, why would you do something like that? Isn't it against the tenets of religion to take life, especially young children's lives?
Yeah.
So what are you supposed to believe? How are you supposed to be led through this narrative? And I think that that's where it's really difficult for, say, and I want to say this in the most respectful way, more analytical minded fans to be able to make sense of something that is usually very analytically presented, and that's Star Trek, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, we kind of skip over these things like they bombed a school, like that is literally, that is a thing that happened on DS9, and we just sort of move on to the next episode,
Right.
And I think you're very right about how, okay, you start out with this very interesting premise, which is we're going to spend our time on the space station outside of Bajor, between Bajor and a wormhole. And there are aliens in the wormhole who are very powerful and very mysterious, and the Bajorans worship them as gods. And go. And then you
Right.
work in Cisco's story. But that doesn't mean that all of that had been fully fleshed out to the point where you get to the PA race and you get to what Cisco's role actually is here and how that will play out. So there's a lot of that that is being made up along the way. I still go back to the cloud worshippers, on Bajor, who we met once, and
Right.
and I make light of it, but that is another place where DS9 is playing around with this thing. Like, okay, we have this planet where presumably the majority of people share this religion, but even then that religion is broken up into different expressions, different versions, and there's definitely not going to be consistency among that because, well, look at Earth. There are some dominant religions, but even within those dominant religions, there is not a whole lot of consistency among those.
No, you're right.
Yeah, both in the tenets of the religion and the expression of those beliefs. So I think to Elliot's point here, I can definitely agree with you that there is wildly inconsistent treatment of that as a plot thread. And I also look at this and I go, man, I hadn't thought about where DS9 places these characters, like you mentioned, Dax and Odo and Bashir. That is so interesting to me that how they are just dismissed, or we don't really get into that. We just sort of say like,
Or not
well,
consistently enough, for sure. Not
no,
consistently enough. Yeah.
and then you and I really called out Covenant as being a missed opportunity. I mean, don't
Mhm.
get me wrong. I am here all day for Dukat as a cult leader. I think that it is creepy and weird and fun, but it was a missed opportunity that we actually didn't really explore the faith there.
Mhm.
And we certainly didn't explore Kira's ability to deal with this. And is she going to have her own crisis of faith here?
Right.
We never really got there. It just became about the plot, you know?
Right. I mean, we did make mention that, oh, if you're wearing the red armbands, you're obviously the evil religion.
Right, right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
That seems very sort of uh, it's too simplified. It's too
Mhm.
simplistic a way to address this,
Yeah.
And Elliot, that is fascinating. Your take on Far Beyond the Stars. Um, That's one of those things that I think you kind of have to have the prophets there to justify an episode like that. So I'm glad that we can use their mysterious powers and manipulating time and all that to give Cisco that experience. And I really like how you draw that parallel to say that is like a religious experience that then one person can internalize because they specifically had this experience. What does that then do to the rest of their journey? So that may well be the one.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we actually we never saw Cisco really internalize that and then externalize that in an episode down the line where that paid off specifically in another episode. Like, what did he learn from Far Beyond the Stars? I mean, of course, from the obvious Star Trek moral and meaning message against racism, etc., against
Yeah.
bigotry, against authoritarianism, etc. What did Cisco learn from that would have applied to another episode? That's the part that we never got.
Well, I
Right.
think the one place we did, though, and it will always be sort of a controversial or discussion point episode for us, because we got a lot of email about it, was Bada Bing. Because Cisco's reaction in Bada Bing about going into the holosuite to engage in Vic's
Yeah.
world, you
Yeah.
know, it's that, we said it before on the show, you needed that reaction. Did the reaction feel a little out of place, a little forced? But remember, Cisco lived it. Cisco actually lived in that time.
I guess I wanted to see it in an episode that wasn't a comedy-esque episode.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Elliot, thank you so much, and thank you again to our negative review, Chris, from yesterday, because this is one of those topics. I feel like, man, Norman, you and I, we could do whole episodes about it. We could flesh out our notes. This could become a stage thing. This is always going to be one of those hot point topics because it is so personal. We are all bringing our own conceptions to this, but now it is woven into the fabric of DS9. Where can people reach us?
Yeah, you, me, and a bottle of Canar.
Yeah.
And a discussion, and
right.
everyone else with a discussion.
Yeah,
thank you,
for
Elliot,
real.
for writing in. And if you'd like to write in and engage with us, or if you would like to watch us here and engage with us on our comments here, you can always find us on the Roddenberry Entertainment channel here on YouTube. And please subscribe and share out and make sure you turn on the bell notification for Mission Log Engage. You can also send us your comments always at missionlog@roddenberry.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Mission Log Pod. And remember, we may engage with your comments on the air.